All right, I'm going to start.
Go
Three,
for it.
two, one. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Failure Friday, where we talk to friends, clients, and sometimes complete strangers about how failure has shaped them in their personal lives, their professional lives, and how it has made them better individuals, better husbands, fathers, just in general, a more productive version of themselves. And today we have a good friend, Townsend Russell. Townsend is a former owner of a coffee distributor company. He is now a professional speaker, blogger, and brand owner of 100% Dad, a brand focused on encouragement of positive and present fatherhood. He is also homeless. His crazy ass decided to follow the trend of sell everything and buy a massive RV and take your 3 young children and wife and travel the world. And I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about that. But I think we all follow the consensus that you love it, right?
Yeah, well, I do, but just because I'm homeless and unemployed and did all that doesn't mean I was following a trend. We did that 2 years ago before it was the cool thing to do.
I'm sorry.
We
Townsend
were
started the trend.
I was the trend.
He was the trend. Hashtag Townsend. I mean, I don't feel like that intro really does you justice. So, I mean, I'm going to take it a step further. Out of all the titles, all of the accomplishments, which of them speak most to the legacy that you hope to leave when you're dead?
Oh, handsome and chiseled. You left those out though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, certainly family is important to me. That's why I started a brand that was all about fatherhood. That's why we went on this tour, this journey with the family, instead of starting a new business, instead of plowing to the next idea, the next thing. Hey, there's no talking. Go back to your room.
So why?
Failure Friday podcast has been interrupted already once.
It's okay. It's about father. It's about fatherhood, right?
Why? Yeah, and I just told him to go away.
Yeah, there you go. He loves them. We swear. But why fatherhood? Why is fatherhood so important to you?
I like it. I don't know. I love it. It just is. I feel like that's kind of the whole, meaning and purpose of my life. My marriage is incredibly important to me. So, my wife is very important to me, and the people that I'm raising and who I'm raising to become are very important to me. It's always kind of been a, natural calling. I think even as a kid, it's something I wanted in life. It's, I always knew I wanted to have a family relatively young. That way, in my head, I always just wanted to be able to play with them. I just didn't want to be an older parent that, didn't get to enjoy, wrestling around with their kids and having the energy to raise kids and things like that. And then I think if you really, we go to the psychological aspect of it. If you look at my upbringing, there's just things I wanted to correct and I wanted to change in my family tree. And really have a multi-generational impact and not only change what kind of father and family that, not what kind of father I am and family that I'm raising, but make sure, my kids can also do the same thing and raise a great family, just have that legacy kind of continue.
Speak to that a little bit. What did you feel like you lacked from your father role model? I imagine you had a biological father in your life. Different male figure.
I think most people did have a biological father.
No, that is not true.
Really? I don't know how life is created without a biological father.
Well, I mean, not that's present though. Like what were you lacking that you decided to correct?
Well, my dad's still alive, so I try not to dig too deep into that, just because he's still involved in our lives, and I don't want there to be resentment and embarrassment and things like that. So my parents divorced basically when I was born. So like a divorced household, it's kind of all I knew. But I knew by like middle school, certainly by high school, like I wanted a complete family. I wanted a normal family. I wanted a mom and dad in the same house. I wanted to be able to, siblings, to grow up with siblings. If you look at my life, stability is something I definitely crave, and that's something I didn't have. I think I went to 13, 14 different schools by the time I hit 9th grade, and then 9th through 12th, I actually stayed in the same school. And like, we weren't even a military family. That was just bouncing around between custody, different places. I had step parents. So, I didn't have any of the extreme. There was no child abuse or anything like that. Not like extreme physical abuse or anything like that. There was no sexual abuse. There's no crazy story like that. It's just, I lacked stability. I lacked, I don't know how deep to get into that, but I think I was lacking.
It begs the question, right? You built a whole brand on it, and I've read your blogs. I follow your Instagram, and some of these foundational principles are, like, where did you learn them if you didn't have them? Kind of like, how did you come into this wisdom?
Sure. So that's just a whole lot of knowing what I wanted in life and then trying to gain that knowledge. There were probably, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe a few more father figures in my life. I kind of always latched on to the older guy and tried to learn from them. I would take, I moved out when I was 16, moved in with a friend's family. Damn. And, like, their dad was like a father to me. And lots of like close friends' dads became father figures to me. My grandfather was a father figure to me. I would read books and almost read them like biographies from like that. Hey, what is this guy trying to teach me? Almost as if they were a father to me. And then as I got older and actually had kids, learning like parenting strategies and, when it comes to like business stuff, like, I did a lot of reading. I talked to a lot of guys. It was almost always older men that had some success in their lives, either in their family or their business or, just financially or in their career. And I was just always looking to learn from them. And so it's just kind of this continual cycle of listen, I want to have a good life. I want to have a great family. I want to raise kids well. I don't want them to rebel against me. I want to always be there for them. I want to make sure, when we're older and I'm a grandparent, that sorry, all the kids are coming in.
You're fine.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to the bedroom and record. Nope. Just started at 4:30. Sorry, location change.
No, you're fine. Lighting's probably better.
All right. Maybe not.
Boom.
How's this?
That's good. That's actually really good.
Perfect.
That's good. So we were talking about, and I almost feel like that's, and I got to be careful how I say this, but it's almost beneficial that you didn't have this amazing singular father figure that was giving you everything you needed, because you found so many different perspectives.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely a life, I'm trying to avoid that same path for my kids. I want to be able to raise them in a way. I hate the shadows on this failure podcast. How's that? Do I look handsome?
You look about 20 years younger now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's good.
Just grab your skateboard and skate on by.
I know. I tried that once and I bruised my coccyx.
What the hell?
Which is the bone at the very tip of your tailbone. I don't know if anybody knew that.
Now they do.
Yeah.
Now they do.
So, I'd like my kids to avoid that. I'd like to be able to raise them in a home, that obviously had a good father and the whys are explained and, we just live a good life and explain why we make the choices that we make and raise them to be good men and good fathers and good people in the community. That way they don't have to learn from the lack of, they can just instead have a higher starting point and go beyond, even my wildest dreams for them. So, but that comes, we hear from people all the time of like, hey, even myself, I come from a divorced household. That doesn't mean you're destined for that. There's people that were abused, like horrible stories out there and they make good out of their life. But, that doesn't mean we want our kids necessarily to go through that exact exact same experience. We'd like to raise them to have the same values, have the same integrity, have the same lessons we have and knowledge we have, but maybe a more wholesome path.
So I imagine, even though you had all these wonderful perspectives, you still didn't have exactly a household example to model from, in your opinion. There had to have been steps along the way where you had to learn from failure. So what were some of those the most impactful experiences that you can look back now and be like, it is because of that experience that I am the father I am today, that people can learn from?
That's a good question.
Thanks.
I don't know that there's any one major thing. I think in my life, I think it was just a whole bunch of cumulative as far as the fatherhood aspect of it. Now, if you go to business, whole different story. If you go to finances, whole different story. There's some like big major events there you can kind of pinpoint. But just collectively as a whole, I saw enough big blow up fights. I saw what a divorced household's like. I saw what going through divorces like. I saw what custody battles are like. And then I guess I was kind of lucky that I had I have a really sweet, loving, nice, kind mom. That was kind of like this. I hate to say the phrase "good and evil," but like there was a black and white difference between my mom and my dad. Almost makes you wonder how they got together. So like I had this perspective of like what life is like over here and what life is like over here. And so I could kind of see such a big difference in those two households. And I think that just kind of helped had this cumulative effect of a picture of kind of what I wanted in life. And, there were good aspects about my father, and there were some really bad aspects about my father. And there's good things about my mom, and there's some bad things about my mom.
Of course.
And so, I think that's been my whole life up until, and even still currently, is I'm always looking at people, looking at situations, and trying to extract some useful, good information from that. And also identifying like, hey, that's not good. I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And just almost making a mental note of let's avoid doing that thing because it doesn't work out very well. So yeah, I wish I could, I know this is a failure podcast. I just didn't even think about it from that perspective in my preparations. I guess I failed to prepare very well.
Oh, like what you did there. Very nice. Very nice, Townsend. Well, then switch gears.
It's all cumulative. It's all kind of like, it's been ebb and flow from the father. Because even like right now, and then we can switch gears, even as a father, like I haven't done anything, a major failure in raising my kids, but there's been little failures. There's been times I've lost my temper. There's been times I haven't fed them all that great. There's been times, we probably lived too structured or not structured enough. Like there's little things here and there, gave them the wrong medicine. But there's been like no major, I didn't bail on the family for 3 years and realize, oh, I really miss them. I should probably be there for them.
That was like one end of the spectrum, and then you just went. Like there's a lot of room in there. I was not.
There's no room. It's either you've abandoned them.
Oh my gosh. Okay, but then I imagine all of these things, fatherhood, business, finance, all of them blend together, especially when you've owned a business, you built a business, owned a business, sold a business. So switch gears, tell us where you failed and how that's impacted you now as a business owner, because you're going to pass that wisdom on to the boys one way or the other.
Sure. And it's all in my life, it's all been intertwined because I went the small business route where we worked for ourselves, and we also homeschooled. So like life gets so intertwined when you do that. When you're a small business owner, and you homeschool, and you're very family oriented, like they all, like you do homeschool at the office sometimes, and you do work at home sometimes. And, it's very, very intertwined, which I like. I actually enjoy that life, but,
I think it's great for your kids to see that.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to grow up in business, and obviously they're growing up in a family that for the last 2 years has been together 24/7, 365. I mean,
you're a living social experiment.
I really am. And it's gone really well. We always said, like, if this turns out to be a complete disaster, if living in a sardine can and cramming us all, inside of it, is sending us in a bad direction, then we'll stop doing it. But if we're liking it and we want to keep going and the family is still tighter and more bonded than ever, then we'll keep going. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. And so we kind of have like an indefinite time frame, but it's always kind of that current assessment of like, how's the family doing and where do we see this going? And we seem to like it, but I've asked myself, and I've even asked Ryan this question a few times, like, I wonder if the kids are like going to be raised by such an involved father that like they'll want nothing to do with a family when they're older. They're like, I spent so much time with a family as a young kid that I just want to be independent and by myself out in the woods somewhere, never get married and never have kids or never be near them.
One of your boys probably will be like that. I mean, there's always one.
Think so. I mean, you can already hear the way they talk. Like they already talk about, what they're going to do with their kids and, what adventures they're going to do and things like that. So they already kind of talk in a way where they, and they're at the ages, 11, 8, and 5, where they really want to emulate dad. And they're all boys, so that's a little bit easier. So they already kind of talk like that. But so I think it'll go well. And I'm very open on life and the life choices I've made. And then obviously I document and I write, and all those things that are public are going to be available to them. And as they get older, I know, and that's why I'm careful when I write, like I know this will be read by my kids. And I could die tomorrow, trying to fix something on the rig. Yeah. And so it's not like I'm right.
We got to paint this picture real quick. He's in the middle of Alaska right now. And he says sardine can, but I'm going to have you walk out there and show them your sardine can. But the sardine can is broken.
It is.
And they're just in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness, and they've been
Luckily,
here for how long?
we did not peel the lid off by going under a small bridge. I've seen that, and that's an ugly picture.
Almost. Can you show the viewers real quickly just walk out and show them the sardine can you're referencing?
Well,
Please.
I just got comfortable. Yeah, I mean, I feel like post-production, we just throw a picture up of the rig. All right, can I flip the camera?
Yeah.
Hey.
What are you doing?
Ryan or Kendall wants to see the rig. There's Ryan. Say hi.
Hi.
I don't think you guys can hear each other.
Oh, is that her podcast?
That's her podcast. I know.
I told you should do this podcast.
Yeah. Sorry.
I can
Hi.
What?
I'm going to tell her about a list of fails if she wants.
Oh, Ryan has a list of fails too, if you want.
Well, I was hoping she'd be on it as well, but I can do her alone. All right, here's the sardine can.
I don't know how to flip the camera in this.
You're only 35. Get it together.
Right? All right, hold on. All right. Just
there. Encouragement and wisdom. And he's got his family on his sardine can. Yeah, you guys, he's living large.
Right.
How freaking cute.
That's where we've been so far. So I'm going to peel this off one day. I'm going to cut it out. And we need to tighten up some of those red lines. Yeah, so we like Indiana Jones'd it. So I'm going to cut that off one day and have that in my office just framed up. Yeah, it's pretty dope.
It's pretty dope. It's pretty dope.
Look, do you see where I am?
We had to paint that. Yeah, you're in the middle of nowhere. You're in a scrapyard. So I think it's funny and useful because this whole lifestyle that everybody's trying to do right now is always picture perfect. He's in a scrapyard.
Yeah.
With his 3 kids. It's gated though, so they're okay. So don't call a government agency. They couldn't find him anyway.
The gated you can just walk through, but yeah, just scrap metal everywhere. And then my power cord. It's not always
roses and mountains, guys.
They let me just plug in an extension cord, so that's about it. Yeah, I'm living the good life, Kendall. Life's good.
Yeah, we're catching him on a great day for a Failure Friday podcast.
In the industrial section of Fairbanks, Alaska. Enjoying the wilderness.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to show the viewers that so they could paint a picture, but I do really want you to talk about, you have so much to give to this audience, a failure that has proved instrumental in making you who you are today.
Well, now I gotta get comfortable though. The one thing about an RV is it's hard to sit in places. All right. Am I handsome?
Yeah, you'll
Am
do.
I sweaty? Oh. All right. What was the question? Something about failure, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a whole list of those, especially so if you get into the business world, anybody that's a small business owner really kind of knows, because small business life just day to day has like 400 failures every single day. And then you also have like 400 wins. But it's just day to day up and down, which is like the thrill that I enjoy. But our very first business move, gosh, how many did we buy? I think we bought 24 Tassimo, commercial grade Tassimo coffee machines. And at the time, I think they were about $1,000 each. So I spent like $24,000, and I think we had like 30,000 to launch the business. So I spent 24 of it buying these machines, and they're very much like that movie Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith when he buys those like bone density imaging machines, and they take the picture with like all those machines in the background, and that's how he's going to make it. It was very much like one of those moments. And so we had all these machines. They were in our garage because we started in our garage. The office was the spare bedroom. And when I sold the business 10 years later, we still had probably 8 or 10 of those machines new in box up in a pallet somewhere. I mean, it was, because that's all when we first started, I was going to be a Tassimo distributor. That's the only machine we were going to carry. That was the only product we were going to carry. That's what I was going to sell. And we quickly realized that was the very first move I did was a very, very bad decision. And it was a wrong decision. Tassimo machines were not that great. They were way too expensive. They were way too complicated. They had a lot of mechanical and engineering failures. And it was it was a unique twist. It was a cool twist. It was a good sell for the people that had them. But it was a hard sell because everyone knew Keurig as a single cup, and they knew bulk brewing coffee. And so it was a lot of like consumer education in the sales process, which made it a more difficult sale. So it was probably only a few months into that I had to pivot and really change the entire structure of the business so that we could be successful, because we weren't going to be successful with those Tassimo machines. So,
well, what sold you on selling them in the first place? You're a smart guy.
Yeah, they were a cool machine. The OCS industry was similar to the vending industry, which is what I was in at the time. So there were parallels there. I saw a void in the coffee industry because a lot of the vending customers were looking for a coffee distributor that could do a good job because they didn't like theirs. So I knew there was a void in that market. And then the machines looked cool. It was backed by Kraft Food Service. So, I thought, hey, this is a big $1 billion company. They probably did this right. They thought they were going to take over Keurig. It was unique. It was barcode scanned. It could make like a really good espresso. It could make mixed drinks. And, I was sold on it. I tried it. I liked it. And, even at the very end, when we did sell, I liked that machine. We used it. I had one set up in my office. We had some customers on it. It was overly expensive. It had a lot of issues. And like the product cost was a little bit more expensive than Keurig. But in the end, it wasn't a good business.
The margins weren't there.
Margins were about the same as Keurig, but in bulk brewing coffee, those were higher margins, where you actually just brewed coffee instead of a single cup method. And that's where we ended up kind of making our name and having the most sales. So completely different equipment, completely different product. But anyway, so I love using that example because our very first decision was the wrong one, and it was a big wrong one. That was like a good chunk of our.
Well, you said you had 30 grand, and you spent 24 of it on those machines.
Yeah, that worked out really well.
You're fine, Ryan. I heard her. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is the best.
So the best part, listen, if this, you're going to get interrupted this much and move this much in a podcast, it should be on a failure podcast.
Oh, we're here. We're here. We're living it. Okay,
I can also tell you, it's getting hotter and hotter inside this RV.
Your nose is getting shinier and shinier, so I've noticed. It's okay. We're going to own it. We're going to own it. Use your shirt to wipe it off. 100% dad. Sweaty.
Yeah.
Oily.
My other shirt was more breathable, but one of us didn't like it.
Okay, well, the whole point is we're talking about your brand. Good God.
Yeah.
We're
100%
editing
dad.
all of this out.
At 100DAD. 100DAD.com.
Okay, so back to the pivot. You pivoted.
Whoever's editing this, I'm really sorry.
The thing
Your
is,
work's
we're
gonna be
probably
cut out for
not
you.
going to edit a lot of this because this is actually my favorite part of this podcast.
Really good. I'll be
Okay, so you
drenched in sweat
pivot.
by the end of this.
Can you
I pivot.
explain what a pivot is to people who are just starting their business?
A pivot on your right foot gets you going in the left direction.
Okay. We have a long way to go with this guy.
That's not true. So a pivot in business terms, something wasn't working, and we realized and we recognized that even though we were committed, in this case it was the Tassimo machines and single cup and using them, and we had minimums. Like I guess that's something that's probably not even talked about very often, is when you enter distribution agreements with someone, you have minimums you have to buy. Like you have requirements or they will drop you as a distributor, and this product was exclusive to that machine. So even though I own the machines, I had to buy X amount of product all the time for the amount of machines I had. And if I didn't do that, and if I didn't meet the increases, they could drop me as a distributor. And that would be a bad thing, because then I'd own a lot of machines I can't buy product for, which would be a really bad situation. So I had all these machines. We really didn't have almost any customers. We just needed to get volume somehow. And so we kind of had to make a decision on, do we continue to do the hard sell, convince people to drop whatever coffee machine they have, and not only switch service providers, but switch machines, switch coffee, switch the style of how the coffee is made, which is a harder sell, a more difficult sell. Or do we make a switch to what they're already using and sit there and say, hey, we can do what you have already. We can just provide you a better service. We can provide you a better product, but you won't have the learning curve of this whole new equipment, this whole new product experience. And there was a mentor of mine that was actually a distributor. His name was Rick Ganatowski. He's out of Tampa. And I still talk to him to this day, because he's really the one that kind of pulled me aside and said, Townsend, this Tassimo thing, like you see it's not working. I sell you the Tassimo product, like it runs through our warehouses. I see your numbers, you really need to look into, this type of equipment and bulk brew coffee. I can help you get started. These are, here's some coffee roaster contacts you can reach out to. And this is just something you really need to consider. And so we kind of had to sit down and look at, do we kind of cannibalize essentially our customer base by limiting our Tassimo purchases, by switching people over to the bulk brew coffee, or all the new customers we're getting, do we sell them on the bulk brew coffee and not sell them on the Tassimo as hard, and then kind of risk losing our distribution. So there are some hard choices to make, but in the end we ended up going to a lot of bulk brew. We ended up bringing some Keurig on, even though in our distribution agreement we weren't allowed to carry another single cup, I don't think. But it was just obvious that was going to be a lot easier to do. There were people that were unhappy with their service provider, but kind of wanted to keep the same product. When you go to a car dealership, they have those, the glass pot coffee or the air pot coffee machines. They didn't want to switch to a Tassimo machine. They didn't want to have to educate every customer that was coming in there to get an oil change or get a new car. They didn't want to have to teach them how to open the machine, how to put the product in. It was just too complicated. They wanted to stick with what they had. They just wanted somebody that could deliver the products and repair the machines more reliable. And that's what we became. And so we did that really well. We executed really well on it, but that was a big pivot. We had to make a change in the business that made sense for the business.
How did you find the capital?
I didn't. At that time, I didn't. We just had to do, one machine at a time. We had a little bit of money coming in, but not enough to sustain us. Luckily, we didn't. When we started the business, we didn't get a big warehouse. We didn't take on a staff. We didn't do any of that stuff. So we had low overhead. At that point, when we bought our house, we did the whole 20% down, and we had been making principal payments against it. So our mortgage, and I think we had refinanced right before we did the business. So my mortgage payment was actually really small. So I went from like $900 a month to like, I think $458 or something like that when we refinanced. Because we were able to refinance down to like, I think we had paid it down to like $130 or something left on the mortgage. So, over 30 years, that's a really small number, but we had continued to we made the $430 payment, and then we would make the other, $450 or $400, whatever it was, against principal every month. So our goal was to get that paid off quick. So we kind of kept the same mortgage payment, but that gave us leeway, and how we could build. But we were broke for like 3 years. I mean, it was tough. But like I said, we didn't have all the overhead. We still cash flowed it. Once I got a little bit of success, I think around year 3 or so, that's when we started getting into trouble with debt, because a banker finally convinced me to do credit cards, which I was so dead set against. But we had a few customers.
Why credit cards of all the debt?
Right, the banks would not. I was 24 when I started the business.
Okay. Context.
So the bank. So I don't know if my age was it or just new businesses, but the bankers just would not do loans, even though we'd be like, "Hey, we have this hospital that wants to use us as a provider. We just got to buy the 50 machines, and the machines are like $2,000 a piece, so it's like $100,000 of equipment. We need to borrow $100,000 so we can buy the equipment, so we can have all these sales from the product. Well, that's a lot of sugar, that's a lot of coffee, it's a lot of creamer, it's a lot of cups, it's a lot of stirs. That's a lot of stuff to sell from a hospital group who we're pretty sure is going to actually pay the bill. So it was a solid customer, and they would just sit there and say, hey, we don't do loans to small businesses, and the best thing you need to do is get a whole bunch of credit cards and just accept that high interest rate as the cost of doing business when you're a new business. And I was like, oh, that's stupid. And then around the 400th time I heard that, it started to make more sense to me. And then it was like, hey, but you can also get, those 0% offers, and you could jump balances. And then Amex gave us it's like a purchasing card. And then that was going well for a while. And we were jumping 0% balances and everything.
Explain that. Go into that for a second, because a lot of people don't understand what you're saying when you say that.
Oh, so okay. So 0%, there's just credit card offers you can get, and they'll say, hey, it's 0% interest for I don't know, 18 months, 12 months, whatever it is, and then it jumps to that 25% interest rate. But it's 0%, so it's gonna, in the world of borrowing money, that's cheap money. So we would do 3 or 4 cards with I don't know, $2,000, $5,000, $8,000 limits. You could max them out, and then once that time period came to where it was going to go from 0% to 24% or whatever the percentage was, we would find a new deal, and we would say, hey, this credit card's offering 0% for 18 months, and they'll allow balance transfers. So we can take the balance from these credit cards that are about to be 25%, move them over to this card for the next 12 months. That'll be at 0%. And that game just caught up to me real hard. And
when did it catch up to you? What was your debt looking like when it did?
Oh, it was 6 figures, maybe even a couple of them. I can't quite remember. So that time when everything really hit the fan, I think it was about my 3rd or 4th year in business. We had just gotten profitable.
Oh wow, that's fast.
And then I kind of screwed it up. And I think because we had gotten profitable, we had brought on staff, we had gotten a warehouse, we had gotten an office, like I had made it. I was kind of on top of the world. We were feeling good. I would go out and we would, drink, and we'd throw down the Amex, and joining all these networking groups and meeting lots of people, and picking up customers, buying equipment. And I got sloppy with my numbers. It was probably the worst thing I did. But at the same time, I think part of me just knew things weren't adding up. And so if I ignored it, I didn't have to deal with it. So, which I'm normally a numbers guy. I watch the graphs and
very much so.
Where everything's going. And even those first 3 years when we were really broke, that's probably where it started. Was I knew on our family budget, like there's no way we should be making it. Like we're not making enough money to survive. And so I didn't quite know how that was happening. It was almost like if I just turn a blind eye, everything will just work out for the best. And there's some
Which
crazy
it
stories.
did. I want to say, like, he survived.
It did. We did survive. And I mean, there's some fun stories there of like, I think 2011 when we were really broke, the shrimp ran in the St. Johns River really strong that year. And we would go out from like, 10 p.m. to 2 o'clock in the morning throwing shrimp nets. And we would just haul in massive coolers full of shrimp. And we were using that not only to feed our family, but to trade other people for like their produce. We traded to get a vehicle repaired. Like,
What?
I mean, yeah, it was wild. And the shrimp have not ran like that since. So that was almost like a miracle, answer from God.
That's
kind of
God, dude.
So that's exactly how we feel. But I mean, so we were trading shrimp for everything. It was very Bubba Gumpish.
Can you
we were
just,
like brushing our teeth with shrimp heads.
Oh my gosh. So I think your story is so much representative of the American dream from start to finish. Like it truly is textbook example. You started a business and you did it right, really. I mean, you didn't hire staff. You didn't get a fancy building. You didn't get all the fluff. You struggled. Did you have kids yet?
Yeah. So Levi was already born, and he was probably the most. If you really look back, I started 3 businesses and sold all 3 together, and I started all 3 around the time I had a kid, and I didn't really recognize it until after the 3rd kid was born, and we kind of looked back and we're like, oh, well, that's kind of obvious that I had a kid, started a business, and had a kid.
Each kid was born. This is how I cope.
Yep. So that was very unconscious. Like I did not realize that was happening until afterwards, but clearly something inside of me panicked and was like, I got to feed another mouth. Let's create another stream of income. Yeah, it was interesting. But anyway, so back to the number story. That caught up to us big time. So I knew family wise, we couldn't be making it. I mean, like if we made $10,000 that first year, I would be shocked. I'm not even sure we made that. The second year, maybe in the teens. And then 3rd year, I think we did a lot better. But just things didn't make sense. And so I kind of stopped paying attention to numbers and was just kind of hoping for the best. And then when we started doing the credit card balances and, lines of credit, things like that, everything was just going good. And then all of a sudden it just kind of walloped on me and I wasn't paying good enough attention to it.
When was that moment? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, we couldn't make the bill. All of a sudden, I had like, our minimum credit card payments were like $7 or $8 grand a month or something like that. And I was making them fine. And then all of a sudden it was like, we're not going to be able to make this payment. And all of a sudden I never fully looked into what happened, but all of a sudden it was like money wasn't coming in and all these bills were coming due. And I realized, holy smokes, like we're genuinely in trouble here.
Was it a conversation you had to have with Ryan, or was she on the same page? How did that go? From a relationship standpoint, I think it's important to cover all bases in the situation, how you incorporate your partner.
When we first started the business, we were 24 and 22, just had a kid. And we kind of sat there and said, like, this is a risk. We were leaving a family business. That was obviously the safer route, but we kind of sat there and said, like, what's the worst case scenario? We're in our mid 20s and we completely fail and have to start over from scratch. It's really not that bad. And then when we had to have a real conversation about doing debt because we were both against it. And then we both kind of went in that direction of, all right, maybe this is the smart thing to do. And, maybe this is what all good businessmen do, that we just need to jump on board. And so we had that conversation. It was the same thing. Worst case scenario brings us down and, we're in our late 20s and we have to start over. And that almost happened. It got really, really scary and not fun. We got sued because the second we didn't make those payments, especially Amex, they came after us hard. And I even asked them, I'm like, listen, call off the dogs. Like, I need time to catch up and like get some cash piled up and get you guys taken care of. But like, we got to be able to pay our vendors that are coming in the door. And keep product coming and make sure, we can make payroll and all these other things. And like, you're at the back of the line right now, but give me a few months and we'll get you caught up. And they didn't care.
And what'd they say? Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, they didn't care. I can't remember the exact words. Eventually it just got to the point where I was just ignoring all collector calls because we were getting hounded by them. I mean, we probably had like 10 credit cards, and I think Amex was the biggest, and they were probably like 70 or 80 grand just in Amex. Yeah, it was not fun. And we didn't really escape that. I mean, they sued us, and we kind of said, if you sue us, you're going to win. Like, we don't have a reason against this. We just don't have the money. And so we ended up, I forget what we did. I forget. We ended up filing Chapter 7 or Chapter 11. I can't remember which one it was. But they knocked us out, and we're going to close the business and be done forever and just start over. And that was going to be it for us. And I don't know what we're going to do, go work for someone or who knows. But I guess through that process, we had to pay our way out of it. But we were able to keep the business and keep the equipment. And all the debtors got, I don't know how that's taken care of on the back end, but so we ended up going through that bankruptcy process, which was, I mean, the scariest thing I've probably ever done. It was.
Ooh, tell me about that. I haven't.
Yeah.
I've never talked to somebody about this. It's usually something. It's hush hush.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I never tell anybody about it. It's not.
But it's important. It happens. So many people file this every single year.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I was, when we went to the rooms and everything, there were tons of people, all sorts of different stories. A couple of people that were faking it and got called out. Apparently, we hired an attorney to help us, which was an interesting discussion because when we went to talk to her, we're like, all right, so how do we pay you? Because obviously we can't pay people. Like, that's kind of our problem. And she basically said, you better find a way. So, you have to figure it out. Some people borrow from family. Some people, do this or that. We still had some money coming in. We just weren't as profitable as I thought because I think basically we were moving so much into debt and adding to that debt column that it looked more profitable than it really was because we weren't making traction on paying that debt down. We were just adding to it. So it made our margins look nicer than it really seemed. And then when we weren't able to increase the amount of capital to add on to, that's what I think happened. Is that's when it actually came piling down on us. And then we probably hit a slump in the business. Like, it was probably just a seasonal
You had to
slump.
have.
Yeah, because all of a sudden just not as much was coming in and the numbers that were going out were just a lot bigger. But the process was not fun. There was a guy in front of us during that process that, the guy basically said, hey, I'm looking through your paperwork. I think this is completely fraudulent. This is why. And it was like the whole situation was scary because they can really wreck your life. There's jail time. They went after us because we had a house, and even though it was homestead protected, they wanted to undo the homestead. So they filed to undo the homestead. They filed just about everything. I mean, they were like, we want to take your furniture, we want to take your house, we want to take your cars, we want to, take everything in your business. I mean, it was, the letters you got were because they're all like basically lawsuit processes. I don't know. I remember not wanting to read them anymore. I'd always call the attorney and she'd always be like, don't worry. Like, this is just, it's a formality, but the reality of it was a gut punch every time. It just, those are feelings I never want to feel again. So I was anti-debt before, and then we kind of went into it because we thought that was what successful business people did. And then I think at my age and understanding of what business was and what numbers were, just it got away from me. But I don't want to get into it again. I don't like it. It's once we were able to clear those hurdles, I think that took about 6 months.
Oh wow, that's not that long at all.
Yeah.
I mean, to you it probably did, but I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Longest 6 months of my life. And it may have been 8, may have been 3. I actually can't remember.
It might have been 3.
I don't know. So it moved relatively fast. I can't remember. I just remember the letters were always coming in. The collectors were always calling. It was not a fun time, and it was genuinely scary, especially when I went through the legal process. And when we were getting letters of like legal action to undo our homestead and things like that, it was just genuinely frightening that you've really, not only have you kind of screwed up your life, but you've screwed up your business. You've screwed up your, the stability, that someone like me craves so much. So it was not a fun process, but we ended up settling out of that, and we were able to clear it. I forget exactly how we did that. I think we might have taken a HELOC to kind of settle that and pay off the debtors and make deals and everything. I can't quite remember. I'd really have to think about that some more. It's a time of my life where it was just kind of like fuzzy and glossed over.
You're purposely trying to block it out because it was traumatic for you. But it's also, I mean, if we're talking about failure, that's something that someone can learn from. And looking back on especially that experience, something that you've never even shared with me. We've had several deep conversations, I feel like.
I don't tell many people that. But it'll come up if we really get into it. Like if someone's talking to me about starting a business, or if they're talking to me about
it's so educational though,
getting funding for their business, things like that. That's when I enter that discussion. I'm like, just so you know, the bankers will tell you this is the smart way to go, and they are wrong. So
but looking back at that, as a numbers person, if it was tracked, technically it could have worked. Looking back at that, where did you mess up? What would you have done different? What advice do you wish someone told you that would have improved that situation so you could have avoided bankruptcy potentially?
So the credit card stuff was too easy. Money just, access to capital was too quick. It was a swipe of a card. You weren't thinking about it anymore. And so I think at that time, especially, being 25, 26, I guess at that time.
Yeah, you're young.
It was different. Like you lose that scrapping mentality. Like you start caring about cost less, because you just swipe the card. It's good. You got it. You got the thing that you wanted. And so, I mean, I talk to plenty of people starting business. I say do it with cash. That's what we've done with all our subsequent businesses that we've started since then. And that's how we live life now, just not borrowing, just because it keeps me out of trouble. And I'm a smart guy. I'm clever. I know how to run a business. I've been successful at it. And still, even someone like me that's good at that stuff can get caught up in it and can be stupid. I think I'd be better a second time around if I were to do it. I just try and avoid it. I think if there's going to be money borrowed, credit cards are probably not the way to go because it is too easy.
But for someone in that situation, what's an alternative? What else have you done?
You just don't grow as fast. You just so if you can keep that scrapping mentality and not have access to the easy capital, I think you make better decisions because you really put more thought into, do I really need this? Is this really a good customer to take on?
That's real.
Is this actually going to pay off or not? Versus when you kind of have that free access to capital, you're like, why not? Let's take this risk. Well, let's buy this thing. So what? It's.
I feel that. I feel that in my own life.
Sure. Yeah. It's just when it's free and abundant and easier. I don't know. You're just more likely to take on risks that you wouldn't if you were in a tougher situation. And staying in that tougher situation, or at least in that mentality, it can be very, very beneficial. That's my opinion. And
struggle's meant to teach. It exists.
And that's how we did it. Even when we became cash flush in later years, and we were going into launching new businesses, it was always kind of that mentality of, do we need to spend this much money? Do we need to buy this model of machine? Because every time I launched a business, there's kind of a big cash up front. Like when we did the vending and the micro markets, it was going to be $50,000, $60,000 of equipment, just the equipment to launch this thing. So, it wasn't just free spending. It was still that scrapper mentality of paying attention to where every dollar is going, making sure there's maximum value there, making sure it's actually needed what we're doing. Just much more careful about what you're spending and what the return on that spend is going to be. I don't know how
But
to explain
looking-
that better than scrapper mentality. I'm trying to think
No,
of
I
a
like
better
I
way
like
to-
that because I mean
Yeah.
you put it pretty eloquently. Growing slower, and I think that it's hard, especially for people today, to grow slow because then you don't have anything to share at Thanksgiving. You don't have much to share on social media, or
Yeah.
it's in a world full of comparison. If you're growing slow, you're losing.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll say we never cared, I think, about what other people thought. I think it's one of the good things about me and Ryan is like we don't really care. We've never been like brand of clothes or like we have to join this, this gym because it's the popular one or, we've always had kind of beater vehicles. Even through that whole process, I was driving like a 1996 Toyota 4Runner with 300,000 miles on it.
But even so,
we just got
you
sloppy
still got
with
caught
it.
up. You got sloppy.
Yeah. And that was just all on the business side. It wasn't buying stuff to be cool.
Yeah.
It was just being kind of looser with the purse strings. Yeah, like I said, I'd never put a lot of thought into it because it was such a bad time and I didn't want to assess it. I just knew I never wanted to replicate it. So we just never got into cards again. We never even did any HELOCs or borrowing or equipment financing, anything like that. We just straight up, I had the money to buy it or I didn't. And a lot of that was because not only that situation, but then you look back to 2008, what happened there.
Oh yeah.
You sat there and said, we've met vendors that were in that same issue of, all of a sudden your customers disappear. Like we had that lull that kind of caught us and forced us into that situation. Your customers disappear, no fault of your own. You were a good service provider, but that big customer shut their doors for whatever reason. Maybe they shipped their work to Mexico. Maybe they just had a problem in their business. Who knows? But that customer shuts it, and all of a sudden you're still making payments on that equipment that no longer produces a single dollar. So we really got into the mentality of everything has to be paid for cash because if everything goes to crap, if 2008 hits again, if COVID hits, which obviously this was before COVID, but if everything comes to a screeching halt, it's bad, it's not good, but it doesn't crush us, it doesn't kill us. And so sticking with that thought process has been, it worked out well. We became incredibly profitable after that. And obviously we were primed for to be an acquisition that somebody really wanted and would pay top dollar for. So, and debt would have, like I said, we tried it, but debt could have gotten us a lot bigger. But at the same point, sometimes you get so big that you kind of topple over. And so it's not good to always be bigger. It's just, it's harder to get the staffing. You got to buy more trucks. You got to get bigger warehouses. So there were problems associated with that. You got to carry more inventory. Then if you start financing, you start financing.
And then
your
the
equipment.
pool of people to purchase it becomes smaller as well.
Sure, because then it's not only is it a more complicated purchase, but your margins don't look as good because you have so much cash going to payments every month. There's a lot of factors involved in there. But even growth, we were always, because when we sold, that was kind of our thing. Of some of the timing for why we sold was simply because, we were kind of looking at, we needed to add another truck, we needed to add another employee. Once we got to that level, we really needed to add another employee to manage those employees. We needed to get a bigger warehouse, and then to support the bigger warehouse and to support the new staff, we really needed to pick up more customers, which would have been more equipment. The cost of setting the customer was getting more expensive, especially as we were moving into the micro market world, which was essentially you go to a customer's location, you take out all the vending machines in the break room and you build a convenience store that's got a self-checkout station. And so those things were becoming more expensive. They were incredibly profitable, but it still was a lot of upfront cost to me, the vendor, because I have to buy all of that fun stuff that makes it look like a nice convenience store, and all the technology behind it as well. And so we were looking at, over the next course of the couple of years, it's going to cost us a few $100,000 in cash to do this, to get the warehouses, to get the truck, to get the employees, to get the more equipment. Probably need to hire a salesperson to be picking up these accounts because I'm already busy. And so we started looking at how much was going to be going out versus an acquisition play where we kind of cash out. We were super profitable. We had plenty of cash in the bank. It was a good spot. So that all kind of led to, that mentality. being a prime target for that acquisition and then actually pulling the trigger on it.
Other than just dealing in cash, what other major changes in the way you conduct business and the way that you manage people came from that failure?
The financial failure?
Mm-hmm.
Probably nothing to do with people. That really just impacted the way I managed the business. And I was very willing to tell customers no after that. If you wanted me to buy you a whole bunch of stuff, it was probably more prospective customers than anything. We had lots of opportunities to take on a very big customer, but it was kind of out of our area, would require a significant cash investment, or maybe a contract that we didn't really like the terms of very much. So it kind of kept us in a safer spot because we were less risky. We weren't overextending ourselves, even though we were paying cash. If you put out $200,000 of equipment for a customer that's out in Orlando, and then you have to create this whole new route that goes out to Orlando, occupies a person that has to drive the 2 hours, go there. Every time there's a repair, you're sending someone 2 hours out, 2 hours back. And so you're kind of overextending your resources. It just made us look much more probably intellectually at those kind of decisions, to where I just didn't mind saying no to new business.
But that's beautiful.
The whole I have to grow, I have to get bigger. We did every year, just it could have been bigger, it could have been faster. We just weren't willing to. We wanted to take on solid, good customers.
I'm glad you said that.
Were going to be good for us.
I'm glad you said that, because every small business goes through this, and I probably talked about this on previous episodes because I felt it. The first 2 years in business, I felt it, where I was doing way too much, and it still happens occasionally, but I was doing way too much to win a prospect over, and it would take hours of my time. And then I have a lot of business owner clients, and I see that in their infancy in their business as well, where they just so desperately want to succeed. They want to prove to someone that they're worthy, and they over deliver, but that's not sustainable. And as time goes by, they start to resent that customer because they've set the expectation that this is the service that they're going to provide. This is the level of service. But as you grow and you scale, that's just not realistic anymore. But they'll resent the customer, but that you can't resent the customer. You set the precedence. And I think that's an important lesson.
Yeah, and I don't mind the setting a standard for excellence and going above and beyond. I think that's a good thing. You have to be able to actually execute on it.
But it has to make sense.
I think I think it's a lot more willing to fire customers that occupy too much of your time for not enough reward, and willing to say no to new business, even though you could get it, just knowing that it's not perfect for you. It might be better for somebody else.
No, I'm doing this right now in my business, and I tell this to some clients who are at the point where they can go to the next level. I'm like, look, you need to raise your prices, but then people aren't going to come. The right people will come.
Yeah, and you're going to get people that are mad at you.
Yeah.
You'll get people that are mad at you. Hey, you're so expensive, you're not worth it anymore, and those kind of things. For us, it was a lot of like, hey, you don't buy enough from us. So, and like you call us a lot over little things. And we usually wouldn't say it that way, but we just kind of sit there and say, hey, there's better options out there for you. Maybe Amazon is a better fit for you. Maybe, so-and-so coffee service is a better fit for you. So it was really kind of a constant process of kind of looking at your bottom 10% of your customers, or the ones that are occupying the most time, and really assessing whether life would be better without them. And so, especially as a small business owner, life factors into your time, factors into it. How much stress you have factors into it. It's just, some customers just aren't worth it. Sometimes it's better to let your competitor have them because they're such a headache.
And that's okay. And that's okay. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're talking about this. Because it's a huge struggle for small businesses. They want to take all the bit, but this is what I tell people. It takes one bad customer, one bad client to ruin it all. It takes one. It takes one to sue you. It takes one it takes one bad relationship. So if you're a small business owner, especially if you've already started, you're starting to make a little money, you're getting in the groove, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to grow. What do I need to do? Say no and become super intuitive about, write it on paper. What is your ideal customer? And focus small. Like you said, you weren't taking customers that were in Orlando. All right, cool. How do I market to the people within 10 miles of me? Who are they? What do they need? What are they lacking? Who are they currently using? You don't have to start broad. Start small and grow outward.
No.
Which it sounds like what you did.
Yeah, and then we pivoted off of that, and we sat there and said there was a big customer that wanted to hire us, but they were all over the state. They had like 20 some facilities, and it was kind of like, hey, we want one person to take care of all of them, and that opened up the doors for us to, because we couldn't do it. There's this, we could say we could do it, but we would have failed miserably. It would not have been fun. It would have been a lot of money and equipment, and so that's what started our second company, which is the contracting side of it. And so we were able to sign them as a customer under our new company. We were able to subcontract the services locally to us. And then because I knew the industry well, I could drive to all these other facilities, see what they needed, and then go to vendors around that area and pick which one, interview them, pick which ones I like best that I thought would be a good fit for them, and then hire them to service those customers. And that launched a whole new company for us. Of being able to contract out those type of services, so we could take on the bigger accounts, so we could take on accounts in different cities and find vendors and place them there, and still have a small source of revenue off of that, because we would take commissions off of those sales.
How important was the business entity structure in these different companies for you, and what did you choose for each company and why?
That was an accounting decision. My accountant, was it my accountant? Maybe it was an attorney. I think my accountant.
An attorney.
I feel like it was an accountant.
Okay.
I can't remember.
It was an accountant.
But yeah, so I went to a
If
professional.
there's an error, your attorney's going to find it.
Yeah, but when you're setting up a corporate structure, I'm frozen on the bottom screen. I don't know if that's happening on your end.
You're doing great on mine.
Perfect. I just have a weird face on mine, but that's okay. I'll ignore it. I'll ignore the monkey version of me staring at me. Where was I going with that? Oh, so for corporate structure, it's more of a taxation thing. It is liability as well, but they all kind of present some form of liability. So I think it was the accountant who kind of said, so RCS, Russell Coffee Service, was set up as an S Corp, and then Russell Investment Group was an LLC. Because most of that was how your income and taxation happens. Like the S Corp is a flow through, but you still have the protections of a corporation, but you don't have to do the C Corp separate taxation. And the LLC was flowed through to personal. So
so I'm always curious because a lot of taxation issues are really just come down, especially with small businesses, come to your corporate structure. If you're making money, S Corp, as far as liability goes, is my favorite right now.
Small business wise, you want the corporate entity for liability protection, and then the more stuff, like if we're talking real estate, you don't want to have like a huge real estate portfolio in one LLC. You want to be able to divide it up. That way, if one of them gets sued, because someone twists their ankle on your lawn, the whole portfolio is not in that entity. So you kind of divide up your liability that way, but it's all going to tax out the same way. As far as corporate structure, S Corp is almost always the way to go, because that flows through to personal. So you're not having two separate tax bills. And then if you're small, I don't think there's anything wrong with sole proprietor if you're in a non-litigious industry, but LLCs it's all relatively cheap to set up. I don't know what the LLC costs me every year, but it's probably like $75.
Oh, it's real cheap. If you do it yourself, it's really cheap. I've always hired someone just because it makes more sense with the amount of time that I have, but it's not complicated. I recommend it. I would look into an S Corp to make sure, because from what I understand, S Corp does 360 liability, whereas LLC only does frontward facing liability, but you got to look into that. I'm clearly not an accountant.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you on that. I listen
but I thought
to
I'd
professionals.
ask.
Yeah. So like taxes and stuff, I always left to the accountant. I never wanted to get entangled in that. And I did my personal taxes before that, but then once we had a company accountant, I just kind of let them take care of that as well. Mostly because I never wanted that stuff to come back in money. It starts to get really complicated. And I know numbers. I took accounting in college, and so I have an understanding of it, but even I get lost in that stuff sometimes. Plus, I don't stay on top of it, and they know the
I hate accounting.
Yeah, they know the year-to-year changes and adjustments that have been made to the tax code way better than I would from year to year.
Yeah, I think that you didn't really illustrate some of the key decisions you made coming out of bankruptcy that made a big difference in those first few years, because you basically had to start over.
Yeah, so after that, I put my head down, shut up, and just did my job and enjoyed.
Did you have to create new entities?
No. We were able to kind of keep everything flowing the way it was. We just had to pay off basically everyone. So bankruptcy basically negotiated the settlement for the process. So we were able to get out clear of that, but we had to pay. And I think we used a home equity loan to kind of get clear of that stuff. So we took on some new debt in the form of a home equity loan. I think this is how we do it. To pay them all off. And I mean, it was a fraction of what we owed, but and honestly, if they just hadn't sued us as fast, I think we would have gotten out of it in a couple of years. But I mean, they came down on us so quick and so hard. It was just.
How soon after you missed a payment?
Like 30, 60 days. I mean,
wow.
It was so fast. And I even called them. I was like, listen, time. Right now, I just need time. And they didn't care. And I think the firm they hired was out of Jacksonville too. They were right next to one of my customers. I remember talking to them. I'm like,
gosh.
It's
like, hey, chill.
I did. I was like, just call off the dogs for a little bit. Like you're like forcing me into a position where I had to go talk to an attorney the other day because I'm like, there's like I understand you guys are going to sue me, and you're going to win. It's not going to change anything here. The money's not there. And if they hadn't come down that hard and that furious on us, I think we could have escaped it. It was just so much so soon. And then because it was just Amex really, because they were coming down so hard on us we just put in because we were going to have to go through that process anyway. It was either lose a judgment or go through the bankruptcy process. That we had to include everybody else in it too. But they were definitely the big one, and they were definitely the instigator on it.
Yeah, that's an amazingly mysterious process because nobody wants to talk about it. Millions of people go through it every year. And I think what people forget is that there's a life after bankruptcy.
There is. And I don't think you can borrow money for a while after, but I never cared. I never wanted to, never tried. I think during that process, we froze our credit. I just froze all of our credit bureaus and things like that for both me and Ryan.
Traumatized.
Whatever kids. Yeah. And we've never undone it since. There's been times I tried to get a Verizon phone while we were out on the road and they're like, oh, we need to run your credit. Well, it's frozen, so you're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
They're like, well, you can't get a phone then. I can literally buy the building you're in, right now, but I can't get a phone from you.
So wait, you got a Verizon phone. That's who you use, so clearly that worked out.
No, I use T-Mobile.
Oh, I thought you had Verizon. You used to have Verizon.
No, I've been on T-Mobile for 10 years. I like T-Mobile, so there's a free endorsement. We've also got the business lines with them still from the business, and got 4 lines for $100 a month, and it's all unlimited. So I'm okay with that. They've been
If people want to contact you, what's your preferred method of contact?
Email is probably the best way.
What's your email?
Townsend@russellcoffee.com. No, that's not true.
No.
Townsend.
God.
Townsend at what? You got me talking coffee. So that email address still does work.
I know, I have it.
Townsend@100dad.com. So TOWNSEND at 100dad.com.
I'm also going to tag your Instagram because it is one of my favorite pages.
At 100 Dad. Yeah, so talking failure there. Have you seen my numbers on that thing lately?
Oh my gosh. I was just talking about that before the podcast. I was looking over your Instagram and I was like, man, his engagement is down. What is he doing?
It's horrendous.
What are you doing?
I have zero clue.
Is it the music? Are you not using the trendy music? Your hashtags? What is it?
So I am not doing anything trendy. I think I got shadow banned a couple times. There's been a couple followers of mine who've presented the thought that I am a white male that's encouraging a normal family Christian life, and so that is not what social media wants. That's not what the tech companies want to see. So I'll be forever pushed down because of that. I don't think that's true.
No. That can't be true. Your brand is great.
We had great growth to it. It's actually dropped by probably 400 or 500 people in the last 6 months, which I'm okay with. I think those are all bots and things like that, because there's been no real steady reason for it. There's been no like controversial content or anything. But yeah, we've also been living a life where it's hard to put out consistent content. I don't do the trendy music and stuff like that. I don't know hashtags. Yeah, I'm supposed to. I don't have to do anything. I can do whatever I want.
You gotta do it.
I know.
This needs to persevere.
I just hired, there's a couple girls who started a social media company in like San Diego. And so I just hired them. They've been just started like last week of creating some new content, and their only goal is to increase engagement, which ironically their content has not done that great. Holy crap. I just got to notice Bitcoin's down to 20 grand right now.
I know. Oh my gosh. I know. I want to buy it so bad. I told myself, is it at 20 grand?
I just got a notice that popped up, 20,000 something.
Shut your mouth.
I'm waiting for lower. I don't think that's the bottom.
I mean, no, it's not the bottom. But I try to buy it. I buy it at each time it decreases 5 grand. I put money into it. Oh my gosh. It's almost there.
Yeah. Let's see. What is it? It just told me, 20,882. I don't know.
Yep.
It just popped up, but.
All right. I'm going to set a timer because when it goes to 19,999, I am putting money in.
Oh.
That's a support level right there.
Watch money continue to decrease.
That's okay.
Do we want to talk about?
It's a long term.
Do we want to talk about my stock portfolio and how well that's doing?
Do you want to talk about that on here?
On failure, whatever this is, failure podcast.
Hey, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Every single one of those I have, they look ugly as hell right now. I will say that.
Yep. So we gotta get 100 ad making some money, but won't do anything while we're in Alaska. It's too much stuff going on to be productive here, but eventually we'll get the conference going. Hopefully that'll make some money, and
I'm excited about that.
Guys, I just want to get an office somewhere and just like work on that for like a solid month, but that won't happen.
Why won't that happen?
It just won't. We move too much. I'm trying to accommodate the family as well. And although the family would absolutely stop if I begged them to, I won't. So plus, if I like get an office, like if we actually stop the RV and get an office somewhere, like that means I'll have taken the truck, and like they won't be able to go anywhere. Or they'd have to drop me out. It'd be just a weird scenario. So it could work.
There's not like a trailer add-on office that you could just tow and you go in there for like 9 hours.
So I've said that before. I'm like, Ryan, why don't we just get another tow vehicle, like another truck and another trailer, like a smaller one, and that we just have 2 separate houses at every place we go to. She's not thrilled at the idea of having to drive, especially towing a trailer.
Just poke.
No, but like when we were in Houston for a month, and that place had a business center, and I actually got a lot of work done. I got my book written there.
Wow.
Or rewritten. So that's out to editing now. So we'll see how that comes back. They're going to come back and be like, you write like a 3rd grader. Be like, yeah, I know. That's why I hired you.
You'll have to let me know what editing firm you use. But all right. I appreciate you so much for coming on here. I wish Ryan participated. We'll have to add her. I'll have to do her separate. Would she do this?
Oh, 100%. So, and that would be better content. because we're be totally separate. Because she can start hitting homeschooling and mothering from a different aspect, and the support nature of being married to some sort of maniac and serial entrepreneur like me. So
For sure. Yeah, that's why I want her input, because there's a relationship aspect that we didn't even touch on, but we've already been talking for an hour and a half, so we can't do it.
yeah, right.
All right. Much love. Good night or good day.
Yeah,
Bye.
it's only 6 o'clock, so there's
I know
plenty of time in the day.
it's 10. It's 10 here.
6.
Good night.
Well, good night. Have a good one.